previous 4 videos of this multi-part series, we've been discussing how to sound hip over the 5 chord. If you're just joining us, then you might want to start at the beginning, so I've linked video 1 above and below. Now, my premise for each of these videos so far has been to suggest that there might be things other than the altered scale that you can play in order to sound interesting over the 5 chord. But in today's video, I'm going to acknowledge that sometimes the altered scale just slaps. Many of you who followed me on the channel or studied with me will know that I'm not a huge fan of modes when it comes to jazz soloing, especially for beginners, as they tend to trap us in some bad habits. Particularly linear playing, i.e. solos that go up and down the scale without any real melodic ideas. But there's something cool about the altered scale, also known as the Superlocrian mode or the 7th mode of the melodic minor scale, which makes it different from using the Mixolydian mode over the 5 chord. And that is that there are no avoid notes in the altered scale. This means that none of the notes of the altered scale will clash with our underlying dominant 5 chord, such as you might get by playing, say, the 4th of the Mixolydian scale. Or you could say that all of them clash equally with this underlying dominant chord. You see, the altered scale contains all the possible altered notes one can play over a dominant chord. The scale tones are the root, flat 9, sharp 9, flat 5, flat 13, and flat 7. This gives it a very strong flavor, which is why I would suggest other avenues initially, especially if you're playing older styles of jazz. But if you want something modern sounding or just something to add major shock value to a line, the altered scale is it. Now, how do we find the altered scale if we don't know it? The altered scale is the 7th mode of the melodic minor scale, which means we treat the 7th chord we're playing over as if the root was the 7th note of a melodic minor scale. Once again, the confusion of modes is starting to creep in, so practically speaking, what we're doing is we're playing a melodic minor scale a half step up from our 5 chord. We're in the key of B flat. Here's our B flat major scale. F7 is our 5 chord, and here is the F7 arpeggio. And if we take F7 and we play a G flat melodic minor scale over top, that gives us the altered scale. Now, you can play a G flat melodic minor scale up and down over the F7 chord and it will work, but once again, as with all modal playing, we run the risk of sounding like we're just running scales instead of making music. So if we start to look for the arpeggios within that G flat melodic minor and use those instead, we get much more interesting lines. The first arpeggio in a G flat melodic minor scale is a G flat minor 6 arpeggio. There's that pesky minor 6 again that keeps coming out. If we play this over an F7, it gives us the flat 9, 3rd, augmented 5th, and flat 7 of F. And it sounds like this. That's kind of cool. Because this arpeggio has a self-contained harmony of its own, G flat minor 6, phrases you play with it will simultaneously sound as if you're playing in the key of G flat minor, but also working within our key of B flat. This is similar to what we discovered in our last video about playing outside. If you use a sound with its own harmonic cohesion, but play it in the wrong key, it can still sound right, especially if you resolve it. Now in this case, we're resolving our G flat minor 6 back to our B flat major 6 chord, the 1 chord. As I mentioned earlier, because the altered scale contains no avoid notes, every arpeggio in the G flat melodic minor scale should work well over the F7. For example, if we continue with our arpeggio built off the 2nd note of G flat melodic minor, A flat, what do we get? We get an A flat minor 6 arpeggio. It's minor 6 city over here. So what does that sound like over F7? Now, if we combine it with our G flat minor 6, so So we start to get some weird sounds with kind of cohesion of their own. Now the rest of the arpeggios contained within the melodic minor scale is a subject for another video, but if you want to explore for yourself, I'd suggest you look at both triads and seventh chords. For example, there's a B major arpeggio within the G flat melodic minor that sounds sweet. B major is a half step away from our one chord B flat, so this is perfect fodder for playing a half step away as we examined in our last video. B major gives us the flat 5, flat 7, flat 9 of F7. Because it's a simple triad, it can sound very melodic. So let's put some of these into an example over our tune Perdido in B flat over the A section, which is a 5-to-1 progression. Here's what it sounds like. So there's some pretty crazy stuff in there. In that example, I was using the 3 arpeggios that we looked at, the G flat minor 6, A flat minor 6, and the B major arpeggio, as well as some of the other arpeggios from the melodic minor scale. Hopefully that gives you some inspiration to try some of these things yourself. If you want the tabs for what I just played, you can find them in our free jazz community. The link is below. Our next video will be the final video in a series of sounding hip over the 5 chord. So make sure you tune in, and I'll see you there.